Hi, I'm Peggy Farron, and you're watching the Understand Photography Show, where we talk about travel, nature, and fine art photography. We're going to talk to Denise Silva today about street photography, but first I want to talk to you a little bit about our website, understandphotography.com. We spend a lot of time on that website. There's a lot of good blog articles, and if you remember, our motto at Understand Photography is we simplify the technical. So go through some of the blog articles, and while you're on our website, right on the front page it says click here for freebies. Sign up for one of our freebies. We've got like, what kind of camera should I buy? You know, what do I need to learn to be a good photographer? We're going to give you a little checklist so you have a good understanding of what you need to learn. Travel photography tips. I forget, there's quite a few on there, so check it out. Understandphotography.com. The Understand Photography Show is broadcast on YouTube and on Facebook at 4 p.m. on Fridays. And we're also a podcast, so you can listen to us in the car. You know, download on iTunes or whatever you listen to your podcast on, and listen to us in the car. And if you leave us a review on iTunes, we'd really, really, really appreciate it. It really helps us come up in the search engines. So, Denise Silva is the owner of Roadrunner Photography Tours, and she's here today.
Hello,
welcome.
Thank you.
And we're going to talk about street photography. But first, let's learn a little bit about you, Denise Silva. That's a really cool name, too, by the way.
Thank you. Portuguese.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, the Silva is. So wow, yeah, I am the owner of Roadrunner Photography Tours, and we go all over, both domestic and abroad. And our motto really is about learning in the field. So we really want to take the time to focus people's energy to capture images while we're on our trips and learn how to do better photography while actually out doing it, as opposed to taking you to say someplace like Iceland or Cuba and then having you in the hotel inside doing a workshop when you could be out, out shooting, right? So we really want to focus our participants in sort of gaining knowledge and capturing as much data as they can while they're out and about, and then we will work with them either in the evenings after everything is settled down or later to maybe teach them more about the processing end of it. But capturing is definitely happening out in the field. So. And
you do a lot of tours, right? I mean, how many tours do you do a year?
Wow. Between us, we probably do someplace between 6 and 10 a year. But we both work full-time, so I work full-time, I have a full-time job as well, and my better half, Jeff Burke, he also does a full-time job, so yeah.
I don't know how you do it.
Candles at both ends.
Wow.
yeah,
well,
definitely.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
so it's fun.
Now, what was the last trip you took? Where did you go?
I actually was in Cuba in February.
When? I was in Cuba in February.
Oh my God, I don't remember the date.
2nd through the 9th.
That's pretty close to when I was in Cuba. Actually, maybe it was January this year. It was February, I think, last year. I don't know. I can't remember. I do a lot of travel, but upcoming, we have a trip to Patagonia. We have a trip running right now to Death Valley, being led by a friend of ours. And we have Palouse this year. We have Africa this year. So lots going on. Lots going on.
And what's your website?
Roadrunnerphotographytours.com.
Roadrunnerphotographytours.com. So now, where do you go that you do you go places with your groups that you do street photography, or is that just something you do?
No, actually, I think it ends up being a little bit of all travel photography if you land in a big city, right?
Yeah,
so
of course,
if you go someplace that is maybe super remote, like Africa might not end up being street photography for us, but we will be in Johannesburg, so maybe it will be.
Yeah.
But pretty much, I think everywhere we travel, there's an opportunity to capture images of people. So I think it's a very natural sort of extension of being almost any kind of photographer. So if you asked, I would tell you I'm probably primarily a landscape photographer, or I would have said that. These days I might actually tell you I'm much more of a street photographer. Okay. I do like getting out and doing it, but I think any time that you're out and about, I think you have the opportunity to capture images. And I think street photography really is about capturing a person's moment, like the moment, a moment in someone else's life, right, that you happen to be seeing, and quite possibly moments that other people might walk by. So that's sort of how I kind of look at street, and I think that happens around every day. Who knows, we could be in somebody's photos.
You know what? It's so funny you say that. I advertise. I'm the cover photographer for the local family magazine, and so I barter for an ad. So I have an ad and I have my picture in there. And somebody put it on Facebook and tagged me because their 5-year-old said, which of these don't belong? They were doing for school, and they cut my picture out.
Oh, Lord. See? That
I belong.
That's
pictures
right.
of people, and then
oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. That's good.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm famous with 5-year-olds.
That's right. That's right. That's awesome.
But it was just funny. I never would have known it without Facebook, though.
That's right. Right. Well,
Facebook,
that's
you
it.
learn a lot about what's going on with your life.
That's right. Who's watching who?
So now, when you say street photography, then you're talking about mostly people and what's happening with the people on the street, not just street scenes.
Yeah. No, I think.
Or are you talking about both?
No, I'm actually really talking about capturing images of people.
Okay.
So when I think about street, and I don't, we do cityscapes and urban photography and architecture, and I think that lends itself more to the scapes, right, of the city, the streets and the roads and the trains and that kind of stuff. When I think street photography, or speak about street photography, I'm really talking about capturing images of people you don't know.
Okay.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have permission, because I think street photography can be both. I think it can be candid, where maybe you're just taking a picture of somebody across the street or down the road from you, and they have no idea. And it's also an opportunity to engage and get permission from people as well. So I think it encompasses both sort of types of photography. But not necessarily just the landscape of being in a city. Right.
Now, what do you look for? Like, okay, so let's say we're in Fort Myers, Florida right now, because we're both speaking at this convention.
Right.
And let's see, we went down to Fort Myers downtown, which is a cool downtown, by the way.
Okay,
have you ever been downtown?
I have
Fort
not.
Myers?
This is my first time to Fort Myers.
If you have time at night, that's when you go
Night's
downtown
fun too.
Fort Myers.
Okay.
They've got an amazing sculpture in front of the Art Center that lights up the whole art center with like words or like Latin phrases or something. It's really cool.
Okay,
and it's got a nice, it's a night city. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Not
no,
late
well, that's
night,
the weather.
We live in Florida and we're old, we go to bed early. But
you have good early evening weather. So
we do.
That's right, night photography.
I don't know if you'll have time because this convention, they keep you so busy.
Yeah,
But if
we'll
you
see.
do, downtown Fort Myers. So, all right, so I'm going downtown Fort Myers. In fact, Joe Fitzpatrick works here. He lives in Fort Myers, so he has a lot of street scenes from downtown Fort Myers because it's interesting.
Right.
Is there like a goal? Do I say I'm going to go downtown and do street photography? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think you can set your own goal. Initially, you might not even know you have a goal, right?
Okay.
So, and I'll give you an example, and we'll come back to Fort Myers, but Cuba is an example. The goal developed, for my goal when I was in Cuba, developed over the week that I was there. Because what I found were lots of people hanging out in doorways, sitting on the stoop, hanging on their sort of gated door that led into their house. And, I'm not sure that I understood exactly why. I mean, maybe at first blush you'd think, oh, well, they don't have a job. And it's the middle of the day and they're hanging out at home. But really, what it turns out is that people hang out in the doorways because they're super social. And they're chatting with their neighbors. And it is the coolest place, literally, physically, temperature-wise, the coolest place because the draft is coming in and out. So people tend to congregate and then just socialize. And so at first, I was noticing really cool doorways and capturing doorways, but it ended up being a project that it developed over the week that I was there, to really seek out doorways and understand
people in doorways.
Of people in doorways. I have dogs leaning off of trellises in doorways. I mean, just all kinds of doorway scenes. And so it ended up being that the goal was to create a portfolio of doorways of Cuba. And so I think it kind of developed. So if you were in Fort Myers, I mean, you might not have a goal in every instance. It doesn't need to be a goal. It could just be about making images. And that could encompass, in an open air area where you have like parks and stuff like that, just how people engage, right? How people interact in a park. What are they doing? Are there kids running around? Is there a dog park or anything? It might just be that you're just down there kind of capturing people doing day-to-day life. A lot of people do projects around homeless people and street people in general. I think that those might turn themselves into other types of goals and commentary on society. Like, just really depends on what you're going for. I think the biggest challenge is getting out and doing it, right? I think that that's really a big piece of what overwhelms people about
All right,
street
I have
photography.
a lot of questions about that. Okay, so my first question is, if I want to go do street photography, and I told you this before the show started, I'm not shy at all. Like, I talk to everybody. And then if I want to go do street photography, I get afraid to take people's pictures. So my first question is, should I go with somebody or should I be alone as a photographer?
So that's a good question. I think as women, I think that there's a challenge, you know, carrying around expensive gear and being, so I think it depends on where you're going,
on
for
how
one.
safe it is, you
right,
mean?
whether it's safe. We tend to, even when we go as a group, we tend to split into smaller little packs of people, so you're not like 10 people walking down the street, which is, for one, you don't blend in at all, right? Like, you are not going to ever sit down and blend in if there's like 10 people in a lump, all with big cameras in their hands. So I think even in that situation, people tend to pair off or stay within eye shot of people, so that you're still together in a group in safety in numbers, but that you also kind of blend a bit more into just other people walking around. So I think if you're going someplace that's a reasonably safe area, then going by yourself is fine.
It's
but
better.
I think that in general, palling around and knowing that you have somebody with you is actually, there's a lot of benefit and just mental security around that, just because you just know you're not by yourself. But as it comes to meeting people or photographing, I mean, there's really two techniques, right? So if you don't want to engage at all, right? So you get to your shy place and you don't want to engage, then you long lens it. You know, something, maybe someplace between 100 and 200, maybe in the reach. So I might carry my 50 to 140. I shoot Fuji, so that's the equivalent of a 70 to 200 for people. So something like that allows you to sit back and see things that are happening further away from you, and kind of like look into the world that's happening there, right? And I find that to be very candid. It can be very emotional. I mean, if you are capturing images of some kind of drama happening, or somebody who might live on the street, you know, you're able to capture that person without, and maybe they're in real environment without any kind of other interaction happening that would change that one moment, right? So I think that long lens photography can be very emotional.
All right, let's stay on that for a few minutes, okay? Because I have a lot of questions about that.
Okay, you're not going to get back to the other one.
This is something that I struggle with. This is a big struggle for me. Because people can see you with that long, it's not like you're that far away.
No, but so you're not necessarily discreet, but the person, you're also not standing right in front of the person. So I think that's why it results in candid photography, right?
But what if you're taking a picture of like somebody fighting with somebody and then they see you?
Run the other way. Move really, really fast. Then he did it. So step into a Starbucks. They're everywhere.
But I just think about, you know, a big kick, you know, that over the last few years is this surprise proposal stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So I tell people what to do now, because they're going, you know, oh, you need to do this, I'm like, no, because they will see me. They will see me. So I have to act like I'm there doing birds or something like that. It has to look, in fact, one of the candidates we did, that they walked right by us. I was pretending to take pictures of my girlfriend. She was sitting on the pier,
Nice.
you know, the pilings, and I was just pretending to take pictures of her, and we had it all, you know, the groom and I had it all scoped out, so I just could go and take pictures, and then went back to take, so she never knew.
Nice. That's very
But they see you.
Right.
Because the 200 millimeters is not that big.
It isn't, but I think a big piece of street photography is about blending in. As the photographer, if you sit down, like you say, go back to the park, right? If you first walk into the park and you sort of immediately whip the camera out, and it's obvious that you're like aiming the camera towards people, right? You're going to draw attention to yourself. But like you said, if you come in and you are shooting other things, you're shooting the fountain, you're shooting the monument, you're shooting birds, you're doing all these other things, eventually everybody else in that park, you become just one of all the people in the park.
So they just ignore you.
And they ignore you. And that is almost in any situation. The minute, you know, think about walking into a party. when the door opens, everybody looks. And once they go, oh yeah, okay, great. And then eventually you blend into the rest of the people. And then next time the door opens, you look. And then that person blends in. I think it's very much the same. So even though a long lens, especially in a city, think about like a city like New York, you would, walking around with a camera, everybody has a camera. Even bigger cameras than little cameras. It might be a lot of point and shoots, but you're going to also get longer lenses. And if you're, shooting taxis going down the street, right? But there's somebody on the street you want to shoot. It's the same idea of your wedding example or your proposal example. You sort of act like you're doing this, and then when they finally stop looking at you, you shoot them, and then you go back to what you were doing.
I like that.
There's little techniques like that.
That's a good way to be sneaky.
You just have to sort of, I think blending in is really key. In general, I think blending in is really key, particularly for candid street photography. But the other side, which is where you were headed, was how do you deal with like actually engaging people?
And that's if you're coming with a shorter lens, probably.
Right, maybe a portrait lens, right? Like an 85, or for me it's a 56. But it's a lens that's really meant to capture sort of the person and drop out the background really nice and make it all soft, and that really highlighting that human. And that's a very different type of photography, and it's not necessarily portraiture, because if you asked me if I did that, I would tell you no, I don't professionally take pictures of people that I'm gonna like do headshots. But I do like to get out and not have everything be like disengaged, which is what candids are, right? So sometimes you want people to be really looking. They have beautiful eyes, like you have beautiful eyes, like you have these big blue eyes. You might see somebody that has these beautiful eyes and say, I just really want to take your picture. And how do you do that? And I'm very shy. So people who know me would be, oh, she's not shy. But the reality is I don't like to meet people I don't know, which is kind of weird because I'm in a business where I meet people I don't know all the time. But I really have to bring myself to that. And so this year's, last year's challenge, not this year, it seems like so recent, but it was just a couple months ago. But last year I gave myself the challenge of engaging. So instead of taking only candids, really forcing myself to engage with the person and seek permission and take different kind of image. And it was just a personal goal, but to try to overcome that, because I'm very much afraid to like walk up to somebody I don't know and be like, hey, can I have your photo?
So give us some tips. How are we going to do that?
Well, you find something to talk about. So it might be eyes, it might be an outfit, right? It could be just their look, right? What is it that drew you to that person in the first place that you even want to capture their image? So whatever that thing is, right?
So you bring that up.
Bring it up.
What if it is a homeless person, and it's like, well, you look interesting because you're homeless? You wouldn't say that.
No, you wouldn't quite put it that way. But I do. There's a guy that I follow. I think he lives in Philly, but he's in New York a lot. His name is Ed Vatsa, and he really made it a mission to go out and capture images of street people, and he engaged them about their stories, right? So when he then posted their image, he knew their name and he knew their life story, and he wanted to put a real human behind somebody who you might otherwise walk by.
How would you approach somebody like that? Hey, tell me your story. What the heck are you doing here on the street? That's kind of,
I think he
rude,
did it,
doesn't it? He must do it much better than that.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. I don't totally know his technique. I just know because I've followed him long enough that that's how he's doing it. But I think it actually started off with something to the effect of like, can I get you a sandwich, right? So it wasn't here's money, and it wasn't can I just take your picture, but I think that he went back over and over and over again and was seen, and those people knew him and he knew them, and he built those relationships. And I think that's definitely a different kind of project. I don't know that would be as easy for women. It might be.
I think it would be harder for women.
But I think that it might be more discomforting for a woman to do that. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to be sounding sexist, because I'm not trying. I would tell you it's easier for women to capture images of children instead of men, because then you just look like you're lurking. So I think that there's just some things that come easier to certain people at certain times. And so street photography, you'd have to know your own skills to handle yourself if the situation went south. And I think that men might be less intimidated by that moment than women, but I don't know. But I do know that he did it in a way that he made the relationship first, and then told them what he was doing, that he was trying to, tell a story about the people that other people might pass by on the street. And so by being real with that person, so this would be apply to any time you're seeking permission, right? Be honest with them, tell them why you want to capture it. So it might be, hey, I just love your look, and it may be, I really want to know your story and tell other people your story, and part of that is capturing your image, and then doing it with dignity, because I think no matter who you're capturing, right, whoever you're making an image of, nobody wants to look unappealing. Nobody wants to, sort of be poorly exposed, kind of pardon the pun, but, they don't want to be taken advantage of, right? So I think if you approach it honestly, you engage them, make eye contact. If you ask, tell me about yourself, really listen, like don't, okay, great, can I take your picture now? That's not going to fly, right? When you engage somebody, particularly with a question or a story that has some depth to it, pay attention to the answer, care about their answer, record their answer so that you can retell their story in a way that shows them dignity. And so I think he was somebody that I thought, wow, I want to be like that when I grow up, right? Like I want to be able to have the courage and the strength to do it. And so I think he's done a great job of doing that. But I do think it takes that kind of capture takes a lot more time and effort and energy, and you build trust.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. So if we are just going on the street though, and you're in Cuba for 1 week,
right,
it's going to be a little bit different story, because you're never going to see those people again. You don't have the time to establish the rapport and the trust, because you're only going to see them one time.
Right. That could be true, and but that doesn't mean that you don't seek permission. So even with that, maybe you don't speak Spanish, right? And so you can't even necessarily communicate what you want. And there were people, there are a lot of people on balconies in Cuba, and you'd look up, they'd look down, because they're watching the street. They're not necessarily looking for me, but they're watching the street. And I'd just kind of be like, kind of have a look. Can I take your picture?
Kind of point at your camera.
Yeah,
and
kind of just
take
indicate.
Your picture, like motion.
That's
Can
right.
I take your picture?
Just a gesture. So it still builds trust, because you're not.
You're not just taking it.
You're not just taking it. Although I've got a lot of candidates in Cuba too, but I mean there are people who, particularly when they've spotted you and you've engaged on some level, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, then you seek permission. And I don't know. I think maybe. I don't even know if this last trip I was waved off at all. I think that for the most part,
everybody said yes.
Everybody's just like, or they're like, oh, no, because they're shy too, right? Yeah. But for the most part, everybody was really game to it. And so I think that there's a way to engage, even when you may never see somebody again, and you don't even have a story to tell. You just want to take a photo. There was a guy I have a picture of. He was standing in his doorway, and he had a gate, basically, right? So his main door was open, but he had, instead of a screen door, they're more like slatted gate doors, right? They're almost, they're metal. And he was standing there, and he was between the two slats, right? And it was just a cool look. And so I'm like, oh, can I take your picture? And see, I've gotten bolder about it, because now it's just like, I just want to take your picture. And he just kind of smiled, and he looked at me. I took one, so it had more of a posed feel, but then he went back to what he was doing, and I took another where he was completely candid, because he was no longer paying attention to me. So I like to find the middle ground between the two, where I might seek your permission, particularly if I'm so close that there's almost no way to hide the big lens, but then eventually they will go back to what they were doing, and you can get a more candid feel. So you blend the two techniques together.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have thought of that, because it's like, okay, I got the picture, I'm done, but
just go ahead and ask and take a few and thank them. And if you have the opportunity, the other option too is to share it, right? Say, hey, do you have email? Not everybody's going to have a yes to that, depending on where you are, but there are people who, especially people you stop maybe randomly because they look cool, that you just are drawn to that person, it's very possible that they are just as likely to have a way to access, and you just say, well, great, and just make a note. You know, if you're going to tell somebody you're going to send a photo to them, make sure you do.
Then please do, yeah.
Yeah, please do. But that is another offer, right? Is to say,
that's a good
you know,
idea.
do you have an email? I'd love to share this with you.
To you, or here, maybe give your card to
or
them.
give a card. I've
that
done
might
that
be
too.
a little less obtrusive.
Right. Right.
And then it puts it on them instead of you.
Yeah, you took my photo.
If they don't get, so, you know, if they don't email you, then you.
Yeah, that's true.
And
but
you won't forget.
But honestly, like, you'd be surprised that even today that people are pretty nice and pretty social.
Yeah.
And if you're treating them honestly, like if you're coming to them from a gracious place, then you'd be surprised at how giving people are. Because I've had people hand me their emails, you know, and say, okay, here you go. You're like, wow,
so
that was
give me some more
random.
examples. Let's not do Cuba though, because Cuba, I think, is pretty easy to take pictures of people.
Well, we shoot everywhere.
At least in Havana.
Yeah, that's true.
Because
but
they're very open to it. It's a big city. They're used to a lot of tourists at this point for the last few years, and
yeah,
and they get money usually. You know,
oh, I've never paid for a single photo.
Not in Cuba?
No.
Oh, we
there
always tip them.
There was a handful of people I think that you can go and have. There are people who pose. There are people there who are there to have their picture taken, and that's very different.
They want money, and they'll
that's
negotiate
right.
with you.
That's right, and that's totally different
but you
than.
don't tip just the regular people.
No,
we always tip them.
Yeah, no, they don't. Nobody where we have been. Nobody has indicated that they care. Well, I'm talking really random neighborhoods too, not big. Squares and stuff like that. But let's talk New York. You know, in a sense, much more difficult. Much more ornery as a culture, right?
People are not as friendly as the Cubans, right?
That's right. Maybe not so nice. But you know, you go sit down, and I have a small portfolio of images of people sitting in parks, and I just went and sat in the park, and you know, find a piece of cool lighting, right? So maybe there's a mottled light coming through the trees in a park, but yet there's one table that has light on it. So those people are basically silhouetted for you, right? They're well lit for you. Everything else can kind of fade out. And again, if you walk in immediately and you know are demonstrative about what you're doing, then you're going to draw your own attention. But if you sit down and you get yourself a cup of tea or coffee, you know, get a soda, hang out. Now you're just one of the other people in the park, and then you pick up your camera and you can kind of go to town. And so. You'd be surprised. I can be honest though, like I haven't really gone up to people. I'm trying to think if I think almost all of the photography I do or have done, maybe is a better way to put it, in New York's been candid.
Okay.
I would say that's probably almost 100% true. Not that I haven't been caught taking people's photos, because you know they're going to catch you.
Yeah, I know.
At some point, that one of those clicks is going to get attention, and you're going to get the look, right?
And what do you do? Do you just kind of shrug it off and like smile?
Exactly. And I've never had the issue of people coming up and confronting me. And I have been with people where people have said, "Oh, you can't take my picture," you know, delete it or whatever. I mean, I've had people.
No, I've had that happen with the police. Twice it's happened to me. I didn't even know I was in Paris the first time I took and she's like, "Oh, there's the American Embassy. Oh, cool." Oh no, man, the guy came across the street, you know,
wow.
Maybe delete it. And another time I was working, because I do event photography, and I was working an event where Laura Bush was the speaker. It was just in somebody's home. It was and the owner of the home was like, "Oh, look at the Secret Service, how cool." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm taking pictures," because I knew she liked it. And they came in and they maybe delete them all.
Wow. Yeah, so that's it. And you know what though, it's no different. If whether that's the Secret Service or somebody on the street, if somebody says, you know.
So you show them, I showed them that I deleted it.
Right.
I was scared.
He was sneaky though, so he was shooting. Yeah, that's a little bit different. I might not play a game, but I've never been asked to do that, so I haven't had to handle it. He actually was shooting RAW and JPEG. So he showed them the JPEG and deleted the JPEG and kept the RAW. Wow. So, but you know, who's going to see him? The likeliness of that person ever finding him, or even him developing that image.
Unless you're trying to sell it for stock, and in which case you need to get permission.
Well, you do.
You need to get written permission.
If you're going to sell it, for it to be used in a commercial way. So there's a difference, right? You go take a picture, and you capture somebody's image, right? It could be in a park, whatever, doesn't matter. You take that picture, you are welcome to sell that picture as many times as you want for your own benefit, because it was taken in an editorial way. So you're not required to have
you mean you
a
could hang it
release.
as artwork and sell it?
But say you wanted to post it as stock, and Coca-Cola wanted to download it and use it in an ad, then you would have to have a release, because you are making money. Like somebody else is making money off that person's image, and you're making money. It's not, but you yourself can take photos and
you can make money off the
and
image.
you can sell your own image,
Interesting.
as long as it's editorial.
We have a stock photographer who comes on tours with us, and she's so funny because she carries all this, in Cuba, you know, people didn't speak English, and she carried all this paperwork around with her, and everybody was signing all day long. She was having people sign these
Wow.
releases. But she, you know, she's one of the few people who actually makes money in stock photography. But
Right.
she works at it harder than most people,
Right.
I think. That's
And
the key to most things, is if you work harder, you usually do make more money. You know?
well,
Not always.
But stock's hard, but it's definitely a different critter altogether,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm not talking about trying. I mean, I make images for myself, and I share them. I mean, I might do a presentation. I have a street photography presentation that I do at camera clubs and conferences, and so people are seeing my images, but I don't have a gallery that I'm trying to sell them out of. It's not what I'm doing. It's not how I use my photography, right? I share my photography. I like to share images on Facebook and Instagram, and my hope is that I can inspire people to get into it, or or encourage people to come out and travel with us, because we have so much fun and we do all this stuff. So I use my imagery in a different way. But somebody who's making a living off of taking images that they then want to sell, because it tells, that one image tells a story, and somebody else who wants to tell that story about their product, that's why she's going through all that effort, because she needs those releases, even though somebody may never see their image ever.
Right.
You never know. So she needs to, prove that she had their permission to sell that image
Right.
on their behalf, as opposed to selling it on her behalf. So it's very different, but.
So let's talk about children, because that's a big touchy subject.
Yeah, definitely do not lurk around schools and playgrounds. That's my first advice. I think that the children are kind of a challenge. We don't necessarily seek out capturing images of children, although I have tons of images of children. But I think there's, first and foremost, don't go to places that are considered, and private's not quite the right word, but if you think about a school, right, or a playground of a school, those are areas that are really safe zones, or should be safe zones for children. Their parents aren't present. They're not really considered public places. The kid's not just out and about in town somewhere. Right. That would probably be super unwise. And you could, these days, I think you'd find yourself in a big world of hurt, right? I mean, I don't think it would be tolerated. But, think about going to a kite festival, or a park, or some kind of event that happens to have kids, and you're just we have a lot of kids photos from the kite festivals, and there's kids just all over flying kites and hanging out with family and playing, and that's a great opportunity to just sort of, again, sit as part of the group. You're just there as another person participating, and being able to capture these kids, flying a kite for the first time, and just sort of the joy and look on their face. And I think that is an area where you're in a really big public space, right? There is really none of us have an expectation of privacy when we're in those environments.
Right.
And also then, if you're in an area where there's a parent, engage the parent, because there is somebody there to get permission from. I mean, the kid may not be the right person to seek permission from, but if you see a kid that is just super adorable, or in a little tutu running around playing, all you do is engage the parent and say,
is it okay if I take a picture of your kid?
We were.
Don't you think they'd go, why? Why do
they
you want
might.
a picture of my child?
If they do, you be honest, because your kid's super adorable. Look at them running around in a tutu, and that usually overcomes the issue. Again, I think if you're honest with your motive, then people will be generous of themselves, and in that case, of their kid. And if they say no, they have a right to say no, right? You just have to, you will get told no, you will get waved off, people be like, I prefer you not. And that's okay, because
But
there's
they'll-
millions of people out there, and somebody else isn't going to care. So
And they'll be nice about it usually, you think? Or
everybody has been. If somebody has been like, nah, please don't, and you're like, hey, no problem, and you just turn around and walk away, because there, for every person who will say no, there's hundreds that will say yes. It really is like that lopsided. There's a handful of people, usually I make a joke about, you must be in witness protection, I just, I kind of laugh it off and keep going, and you just don't take it personally, and they have a right to say no. So
although the things with the kids, because for me, usually when I see a kid doing something cute is when I want to take their picture, and you don't have time to ask permission from the parent.
Well, again, long lensing.
And then are you going to have them coming in screaming at you, Like one of the things I think of, we do something called the Old Naples Photo Tour. We do that, every week during season. And we meet at this fountain, and you'll see the little kids playing in the fountain, like leaning over way far. So cute when they do that when they're little, and it's just, if you ask permission, you're missing that shot. And I go through this big dilemma in my head every time I see that, like, am I going to get yelled at? Am I going to,
Well, I think 9 times out of 10, nobody's going to say anything. And, it's a public place, right? Like it's very, there's clearly people around.
It's right on the street.
Right.
On the street.
So I think that's a little bit different. And if you take it and someone catches you and comes up and confronts you, then that's when you say, oh my God, it was just like the cutest thing ever. And that you have to sort of roll with those punches when they happen, and just kind of address it in the moment. I have a lot of pictures of kids where they might be from, 10 feet away from me, sitting at a festival with their family, and their parents are sitting right there. I didn't ask anybody. I just literally picked up my camera and took a picture. They would have to be completely not conscious to not know I did it, and they're not worried about it. So I think it depends on the situation, and it certainly depends on the individual person. But we've gone and sat, a lot of times we'll go sit in an outdoor cafe and then just shoot people walking by. So we're not even moving. We're like literally having breakfast or something like this, and people are just coming up and down the street, and we're capturing their images. And some people are like, what do you guys do? And we're like, just shooting random people coming down the road, just be honest about it. But this one guy stopped, and he had a kid, and we looked at him and said, well, you're super cute with your baby. Like you've got a little toddler, and we're like, you're just a cute, dad and a kid, like that's why. And the next thing you know, the guy's like, God, take my picture, and was holding the baby up. And I mean, we thought when he stopped that it was going to be like, oh my God, we went one too many, one too many clicks. And in fact, he was, oh, take a picture of my kid. That's
just
cool.
Curious as to why you're taking a picture of him. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. If I saw somebody taking a picture of me, I would feel like, why are you taking my picture?
Right. And I would too, I guess. I think it'd be like, why are you taking my picture? I mean, I think we all have the same reaction. And
I guess I never thought about it that way, but that's the way we should think is, if you're going to take a picture of somebody and they see you, they're going to wonder why. Right.
And if the reason is benign, which in the case of, I think, what we're talking about, right, which is street photography, you're not undercover. You're not trying to be stealth about it. You're out shooting, and you're taking pictures of many things, and part of that is people that you pass. But I think if you're honest about it, I think most people are probably, or at least my experience has been that most people are pretty cool about how they handle it in reverse, right? And if they ask, and most often people aren't even aware. Again, that's,
if you're trying to do the candid. I know most of my candidates, especially in Cuba, because there are a lot of cool people in the balconies and in the doorways, and if you're carrying your long lens around, you're getting. Although I have to tell you about, I was so excited about this one picture because we went to Vinales. Have you been there? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we took a 2-hour walk through the national park and stopped at some farms and things like that. Well, it was 11 women because we had a ladies only tour.
Nice.
And that's a very unusual sight in the country.
Oh, sure. So, yeah. 11 women walking by.
And I remember thinking, oh, I don't want to carry that heavy long lens, but I thought I'm going to do it. And I was flipping because I'm embarrassed. I shouldn't even say this. It's so embarrassing. I'm always in a hurry because during season it's so busy here. I work such long hours and I can never get everything done. So when I went to Cuba, I brought the wrong camera that didn't fit any of the lenses and I didn't have any batteries for. So I only had one camera. I had the backup camera only, but I had 2 lenses for it, so I had to switch lenses. So anyway, I had the big long lens with me. And I saw this dog sitting on a porch, like kind of far off, but I had my 70 to 300 lens with me. And so the dog was just fascinated because there's 11 women, you know, and women are not quiet people when there are 11
They knew
together,
you were coming.
Right, and he was just watching and watching. I had such cool pictures, and then later when I looked at it, there was a cat looking at us too. Such a great picture. No one else got the picture because they didn't have the long lens. Right. Because just like you said, by the time we got close enough that they could take a picture, they were bored. Right. And they weren't watching anymore.
And or you're just too close to their personal space, even their pet personal space, and they walk away. Right.
Yeah. But that was the act, kind of the opposite, where they were looking until you know. Right. But I got this great shot of them looking at me. It just came out so cool, and of course the long lens, the background went all blurry, and it came out so good.
It can work. I mean, it's amazing. I think it's amazing in the experience, and you see differently. I think some key things, though, is to be patient, let the moment happen. So you think that the kid's not going to look in the fountain again, but in fact, maybe if you're with a huge group of people getting ready to do like a photo walk, it's a little bit different. But if you were at that fountain, there's a really, really good chance that that moment will repeat itself because we do things all the time in pattern, right? So even from a kid, the kid's fascinated with the water, might run back, hand mom a leaf, come back, look back in, right? So I think so part of it is, like I said, blending in is a big key, but also being present in the moment and being patient in the moment.
That's the part
waiting
I
for it.
with.
Me too. I'm a fast shooter. I'm always on the go, and street photography requires a different set of behaviors. So like I said, you go to the park. If you just sat at that park by thinking I want to take pictures of people in the park, then patience is going to be hard to come by. But if you get yourself your own cup of tea or your own soda or whatever, and then sit down and use that moment to sort of also relax for yourself, and then just watch and observe what's going on around you, the images will come to you.
That's a great, see now I never would, when I think of street photography, I think of walking down the street looking for things to photograph.
That is I have found that is the most frustrating way to do street photography.
Wow.
It's how we tend to do it. It's how most people, meaning like just the greater we, because you've limited time, right? So you're in New York and you want to get from, Times Square to the One World Trade Center, the One World Observation Tower, and you have to get there, and that requires movement and being in constant motion. Or dinner's around the corner, and you have all these things you need to do, and trying to like make images while you're walking down the street, you see all the things right after they happen. If you saw it happen, you missed the photo. Yeah. Right? So what this last trip to New York, in fact, was part of our personal mission. Now this was just Jeff and I, but part of our personal goal was we're not running around. We are going to go sit in a park and we're going to hang out, or we're going to go ride the trains and hang out. We're going to, take our time so that the images develop in front of us, and we, are able to then see it coming and anticipate it and take pictures.
Now, did you take pictures of people on the trains?
Oh yeah.
So it was the same thing, because that's pretty close proximity.
No, that's totally different, to be honest.
Tell me about that.
Well, our camera has an articulating screen, so the camera will sit on your lap, and you just articulate the screen and or hold it. Like we have 2 different triggers, shutter releases. One's on the top, but one's also on the bottom.
And this is the Fuji.
This is our Fujis, yeah. Okay. So we both shoot the Fuji X8, the Fuji X camera, but it's an H1. Okay. So we both have the battery grips. So the battery grip itself has a shutter release on it, so you can kind of look like you're just hanging out and articulate the screen so that it's not flush right against the camera. It's not up, but it's slightly tilted, right?
So you can see it.
So you can see without bringing it up to your face, just shooting through the LCD. And I think other people could do this if you have a mirrored camera, put it in live view, but basically just kind of shoot from the hip that's how we do trains. We're very careful, particularly on the subway in New York, to, you know, bring the camera up to your face.
Yeah, and that would be really intimidating because it's such a small space.
It is, and it different group of people for sure. The other thing is we'll sometimes do photography on trains with the phones, our cell phones.
Okay.
Use that, right? It's an 8-megapixel camera. Some of them are even bigger. It takes a totally adequate photo for that environment, even if it's a little bit, say, not refined, a little bit noisy. Those things all lend to street photography, so that part of it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a super high quality. You're not trying to do portraiture on the subway.
Right.
So I think that's a way of handling that situation. Is your phone is less obvious. So you could be playing a game or reading an email or whatever, and trigger a photo.
You know, my talks here at the convention are on cell phone photography, and one of the things is if you put those earbuds in your ears from the iPhone, and you can be pretend like you're looking at your phone, and you could be taking pictures of people because they think you're like
looking at your music list. Yeah, that's right. They're like, oh yeah, that's right. But that's precisely the thing, right? It's about being somewhat stealth.
And I can shoot from the hip pretty good. I'm really impressed with myself.
That's good. I'll tell you, who's good at that.
If I'm walking down the street, I can kind of frame something, and I know it always comes out.
Zero talent at that. I will own it. I have none. Jeff will do that. He'll have his camera and he'll walk down the street and be shooting left and right constantly, and he'll come home with these epic photos, and you're like, how did you do that? He's like, well, I was shooting from the hip. Like mine, I get like a half a head, or literally the wall behind them. I can't aim that way at all, so I don't have the benefit of that.
That's funny.
Yeah, I've had to overcome my own personal hurdles by actually talking to people, because I can't get away with doing it stealth like that.
But I'm inspired. I'm gonna. I said that before, though. I like one of the things that you talked about several times in this interview is that, oh, this is my personal goal for this year, my personal project, and that's such a good way to live your life. Yeah, because you're always self-improving.
I guess I don't know that I do it everywhere, but that's in this particular instance, I do think it's really key to improving your photography is to figure out what that next thing is that you want to learn, and setting it and making it a goal that you really have to. I've probably ignored a lot of my own goals, but in this case it was something I really did want to overcome, and I just went out and put myself in the situation. And you know where I went, just as a trick for people who might think this might be something I want to try and explore, I did a tattoo convention. So when I first got the H1, it has in-camera body stabilization, so it's called IBIS. So basically it allows for me to handhold the camera, right, in when I might not otherwise have been able to, in an environment like in a room like this where not a lot of light, but still be able to capture an image without it getting camera shake. Okay. So we got those cameras, and I took a reasonably fast lens, and we went to a tattoo convention. So big open hall, right, like a big ballroom type hall, convention center, and the fluorescent tungsten lights, above you. Not a lot of light everywhere, but one, that was a challenge to learn how to handhold, and two, I didn't want it to just be random. I went up to every single tattoo artist and asked, can I take your photo? And then, they say yes. Some of them pose, some just shrug and say sure. If they posed, I took that photo, but now I've got their permission, right? So I might walk around and do a lap, and when I came back, well, I've already got the permission, so now they're not paying attention to me, and I'm able to also get them working and doing candid shots. And it was a great opportunity to force that engagement, and honestly, in that scenario, those people are extroverts, right?
Who? What people?
Tattoo artists, tattooers.
You think so?
Yeah, you don't
walk around tattooing
you
people
don't.
if you're.
Although I'm an introvert, but yeah, I'm just saying, most of the people in those environments, they're getting tattooed in a convention hall. Like, they're not
the people
shy.
The customers.
The customers aren't shy, and the tattoo people, most of those people have, their business is to be social, right? Some of them have been on TV. So you're already kind of shooting in a safe environment because those people are kind of used to being approached. So I thought for me it was a really, really good way, besides, you know, obviously being interested in the art, it was a good way for me to overcome that hurdle. It was a safe space to go in and know that I was probably going to get told yes. So I was able to, and I had a couple of people getting tattoos who were like, I don't want to be in the photo, and I just walk away, or assure them that I'm shooting the tattooer and not the tattooee, right?
Okay.
But that's one place. Or like Japanese festival where people are in costume. Those people are there to be seen. So you kind of set yourself up, at least initially, to get over that first hurdle of engagement by going to places where you know you're around people who are more than likely have an expectation. They wouldn't be dressed up in, you know, with pink hair and blue eye, you know, blue contacts.
And then that's a great place to start, because you can just take pictures of them, but then if you get your guts up, then you can start talking to the crowd maybe. And,
that's right. Right.
But if you're too chicken, then you can stay with the costume people.
That's right. That's right. But it's like I said, it's a safe space. So set yourself that first hurdle down here, not up here, but give yourself like little increments, because once you get enough, you sort of practice at asking and enough yeses, you gain the confidence to go, okay, this isn't as hard as I thought it was.
It's just like
and
everything.
Then it is exactly like
the more you
everything
do
else.
something, the easier it gets.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Absolutely true.
Well, any last tips?
No, I think that's it.
Let's wrap this up. So,
be present.
Be present.
Be patient.
Be patient. Be polite.
Be polite. Say thank you. I didn't cover that, but actually, you know, if you do seek permission, and somebody says yes, I mean, thank them for saying yes, right? Like, show them that gratitude that you know, they're doing something for you by saying yes. So you should acknowledge, not just take it and walk off, basically, right? Take their image, maybe show them what it looks like on the camera. If you can share, but at a minimum, be like, thank you so much. Because, like, I think that's just as much they're giving you that gift, just thank them for it. So
okay, good.
I think those are the tips. I think really being present is you know, presence is a lot of things. Yeah, presence and patience are good, but you know, engaging and being real with people. If you're real, they'll be real, and at least for me, I've found success around that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna do it.
All right. You're gonna have to share it with me so I can see that you did it. Really good. Now
I got accountability.
Accountability.
All right, tell us your website again.
So the website for the tours is roadrunnerphotographytours.com.
Okay.
If you need it shorter, you can also do roadrunnerphototours.com.
Okay.
But they both work, and yeah, and you can find us. So you can find Jeff and I, but you can find me on Facebook, Instagram. We're both on Instagram.
You mean your own personal name?
Yeah, you can find us as Roadrunner, but you can find us as my name. So Denise Silva. If you search me that way, you'll find me on Facebook, and Roadrunner has its own Facebook page too.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because we all need to have 7 million things to do
That's
every day.
right. I have a task list that includes go be social on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, because there's just too many balls to keep track of, basically.
I know, believe me, I'm in the same boat. So.
But you know what? To be honest, I love being attached with other photographers, because I hope that I can, like I mentioned before, I hope I can inspire people to go out and try things and travel and see the world differently. But honestly, everybody that I'm attached to, when they post stuff, inspire me. I see a new place to go, or a new idea that I hadn't thought of. So you'd be surprised at how being connected with people that have a common interest can really expand your own personal horizons. We all have room to learn. So
boy, do I agree with that. So.
Yeah, it's fun.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was actually a lot of fun.
I'm Peggy Farron. Thanks so much for watching the Understand Photography show. You can see the show note, or read the show notes, I should say, and see the video on our website, understandphotography.com. And I'm also going to ask Denise to give us some pictures so we can show some of her pictures on our website at understandphotography.com. Thanks so much for watching.